We've been told endlessly about the need for Kevin Rudd to be able to present an Australian emissions trading scheme to the climate change conference that begins today in Copenhagen, but he hasn't got one to take. So where does that leave us in the fight against global warming? Will Australia be left out in the Copenhagen cold?
Who better to give us an insight into the climate change conference than environmental crusader Arron Wood? Good morning, Arron.
Good morning. It's going to be a very big couple of weeks, I think.
Does it matter? Does it matter that we don't? I mean, certainly none of the other countries in the world have an emissions trading scheme, or do they?
Well, 22 countries in the EU do, and the US has already committed to emissions trading scheme too, a domestic one, and that's regardless of whether China or India sign on. So it does hamper us somewhat, and I sort of liken it to, what are you hoping to get out of Copenhagen? I said, well, here I am, all the countries sign on, they go to Copenhagen, 65 world leaders, signing on to reduce emissions, and then Tony Abbott shakes me and says, Arron, wake up, I'm the Grinch who stole climate Christmas. So we've got to be a little bit careful.
So that's the idea. They want to leave this climate change conference in Copenhagen with a deal to cut emissions for the entire world.
And this is the thing too, that with so many different countries involved, it's unlikely that they're going to get a completely signed deal. So what they're looking for is essentially four things. One is developed nations, industrialised nations, agree to reduce their carbon emissions. Two is developing countries agree to limit the growth in their emissions. Three, we work out how much it's going to cost and who's going to pay for it. And four, who's going to manage that money.
Look, I think one of the big problems with the Australian public is they don't really know who to believe now. We've really got the Labor and Liberal Party sitting in such seemingly polar opposites on this issue.
Yeah, and look, it's going to be, I think I find it very interesting that domestically we're still giving the sceptics a good airing when the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has said with complete certainty that climate change is happening. So there's no doubt there. And then they've got a 90% certainty, which in scientific terms is huge, is almost extremely certain, if you like, that it's caused by human emissions. So we're having this domestic debate, but globally, people are getting on with this.
There are clearly factions of the Liberal Party, well, there's factions of the entire community that aren't sure about this. They're concerned about the cost to industry and the cost to the public. Does that mean that there's possibly a better ETS than the one that was proposed?
Yes,
absolutely.
And might it be better for us to wait until after Copenhagen to then
Two
take
good
all
points.
of that information?
I think waiting until after Copenhagen, what it does is it limits the ability for all of these countries to come together and say, we're at least considering this. Here's the sort of deal that we've got. And I ultimately think a global emissions trading scheme is going to trump all the domestic trading schemes anyway. So I think that what we need to understand is Barack Obama has now committed to being there on the last day of the climate conference, which is very interesting. 15,000 delegates have exceeded the venue's capacity, 5,000 media coming along to this thing, and one of the most interesting things is that the top 10 most important people at Copenhagen, Penny Wong is one of them. Our Minister for Climate Change globally has been identified as one of the top 10 most important people.
Why?
Well, because the diplomatic clout that Australia has on the world stage after signing Kyoto, we've had a fundamental shift. So whether we've voted down the emissions trading scheme or not, we've still come so far in a little over 18 months, and that's why the world is essentially watching what's going on. Our close ties with America also mean that our negotiating powers in Copenhagen are quite significant.
So you're saying it's working to our advantage to be seen as being proactive?
Absolutely, and I have to come back to the numbers a little bit here too. About $300 billion a year they're saying it'll cost for developing nations to meet their climate reduction targets. The US spent $800 billion this year bailing out the banks. So we're talking a very significant cost, but not as significant as what we've seen with the global financial crisis.
What have you got here?
This is a fantastic thing. It's called the Waterboy. It is great. I'm sure there's a water girl out there somewhere as well.
Well, I was going to say.
Absolutely. Now, this unit, it's cost about $5,000 to put in a grey water unit. So these things are about $399 or thereabouts. All you do is you put this end here, sits over your plug hole in your shower, or it can be attached to your sink, or it can be attached to your washing machine. You actually flick it on. It starts sucking up the water. In it goes. You can see the blue water heading up there.
So in the bottom of the shower, that stops the water going down the pipe.
Suctions onto your plug hole, and it actually switches off automatically when it's full up, and it just lets the excess water go down the drain.
So while you're in the shower, that's sucking the water out.
That's sucking the water out, which is fantastic. You switch it off, and then you can turn it to out, and you can put any manner of fittings on this thing too, and out comes your water. So you can fit dripper systems to this. You can actually fit high pressure hoses so you can clean your cars, all sorts of different things. It's a great little unit.
So what's it doing to the water in there?
It actually does have a filter in there, which is fantastic. So these things actually clean the water. They take out the solids. They are a wonderful thing because of how cheap the unit is. But you can actually then have that sitting out the front of your house, watering your garden, cleaning your car, and not wasting all that water that can potentially go down your drains.
That's a great idea. And this is the thing about the whole climate change, global warming.
Oh, there's money in it.
Industry. There is industry in it, isn't there?
Absolutely. And there's small money in it here, but then there's $26,000 billion in alternative energy infrastructure needing to go in post-Copenhagen. So there is small money to be made in terms of the domestic market, huge money to be made internationally, and that's why Australia needs to be at the forefront. You can actually put a solar panel on this thing too, which means it only uses 30% of mains power when it recharges itself. So
All right, but what if you've got stairs? How do you sort of, thump it down the stairs when it's full?
Excellent, excellent. I'm glad you said that, Kip.
Because I'd slip and then lose the whole lot and there'd be an ocean of
Well,
water
what I
down
love
the stairs.
is you're not standing either side of a bucket in your shower either, so it's quite practical. You leave your unit downstairs outside and you actually thread your hose straight through the window and it just sucks it out and takes it down into your unit.
Okay, so it comes with, you run a length of hose.
You can run 20, 30 metres of hose off it. You can run all different attachments off it.
Very
Look,
clever.
let's just get back to the ETS. Tony Abbott has, kiboshed the agreement. Does that mean now that we've just stepped back?
Look, I think it's a minor hiccup along the road. Again, we've got to remember that emissions trading scheme was foreign language until recent times, and the Kyoto Protocol, which is what the Copenhagen Agreement is supposed to replace, identified 3 tools to actually bring about reductions. The emissions trading scheme was one of them. So the opposition is on very dangerous ground in saying we don't agree with an emissions trading scheme.
Do you think, though, I mean, we've had this discussion before, but I can't help but think that people are just all a bit sick of it, and they're confused and they're sick of it.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what
I think the confusion and the fact that we are being belted about the ears with it all the time is very dangerous.
And people hear the word tax and they think, this is going to cost me more.
Absolutely. And the thing that we've got to keep pushing is the money to be made out of it, the other industries that are created, but a very strong emissions trading scheme. The original emissions trading scheme had $10 billion worth of assistance for low-income and middle-income earners to meet these sort of costs. And we're talking about $350 increase in bills, household bills per year. So it's a significant increase, but can be offset by insulation, which can reduce your bills. Things like the grey water system, we can do more with less, and we can actually meet these and create a whole new industry out of it as well.
Now, we have one of these to give away.
We do.
How good's that?
$399 worth of, your own grey water recycling system. All you need to do is log on to our website.
Yes, and give us your best water-saving tip. There
Yes.
you are. 25, that one.
25 words or less.
Shower with a friend or don't shower at all. That's my one.
Yes, we only bathe our children once a week now. Thanks, Arron. Good to talk to you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Arron.
All right, home shopping time now.